Welcome on YouTube. It's Naleen, your Jamaican scholar, and in today's video, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my experience with breastfeeding. My son Leighton is 6 months old and he is almost exclusively breastfed. And I say almost because he has now started sampling solid foods. However, to be honest, he considers them to be toys. If he's truly hungry, he wants to eat. And I exclusively breastfeed because currently Leighton does not drink from a bottle. He is not interested in drinking from a bottle, so I have tons of breast milk stored that he refuses to drink. Now, I consider myself to be at this point a champion breastfeeder, but to be honest, I did not start out this way. And so what I'm going to be doing is just sharing a little bit about my experience. So let's get started. Leighton was born on the 25th of February of this year, and when we were in the hospital, one of the things that I was very clear about right away was that I wanted to nurse him exclusively. It was on my birth plan that he should not be given a bottle. I should be given an opportunity to breastfeed him. There are a lot of benefits to breastfeeding, and I wanted to pass those benefits on to my son. Now, as a disclaimer, I understand that for some women it is not possible for you to breastfeed, or your body you didn't produce enough milk, or you had complications. And so I understand that as long as your baby gets fed, that's the most important thing. But with that said, it was important to me to try everything before I would have been willing to introduce formula. In the initial stages, I didn't have any milk. I only had colostrum, and he was cluster feeding, and it was super painful. He would cry all the time. He would want to be on the breast, and they would come and they would ask, do you want us to take him to the nursery? And I'd be like, no. I don't want my son to be separated from me, not even for a minute. Anything that you're going to do to him, you're going to do it right in front of me. And so, I powered through it. So we were in the hospital. Well, he was delivered on a Tuesday night, and we got out of the hospital on Thursday. And so between Tuesday and Thursday, we were in the hospital. We had seen lactation consultants, but he had a bad latch. He would bite down on my breast with his gums before he would start sucking. And so he was not opening his mouth wide enough. And so that kind of complicated things a bit when it came to, nursing him. But like I said, I was powering through it, and they told me, as long as he's nursing for about 10-15 minutes, don't worry too much about it. Just make sure that you're waking him up to feed him at the times that are in the book, because you have a charting thing that you have to write. When you nurse, when you change his diaper, did he pee, did he poop? So you're counting pees and poops. You're also checking off whether you've done skin to skin, or they call it kangaroo care, with him. So I thought I was doing well. So we got out of the hospital on Thursday evening, and we came home, and I noticed then by about Friday thereabouts, he was peeing, but then his poops got fewer and fewer, and by Saturday he had stopped pooping completely. Now, of course, I was freaking out. In the US, they normally ask that you see the doctor, you take your baby to the pediatrician within the first 2 to 3 days after you have been out of the hospital. But because I got out of the hospital on a Thursday, I was not going to be able to get in for an appointment until the next business day, which was a Monday. So I felt like something was wrong. He was peeing, but he wasn't pooping. And I was like, I think something is wrong. So I went to my appointment on Monday, and sure enough, they were like, "Yes, you are right. Something is wrong. Um, he's not getting enough to eat." I'm like, "What do you mean he's not getting enough to eat?" Um, and so they were thinking that perhaps I was not producing enough breast milk. Um, but what was happening was that Leighton was actually like nursing and falling asleep. And because I was more looking at the amount of time, because they had given me this window to say, okay, as long as he has nursed for about 10-15 minutes, he is fine. So I thought, okay, since he's nursing for that period of time, then I don't need to wake him back up to try to feed him again. He got enough food. But no, he was not getting enough food. In fact, he had lost a pound between when he was born. So in 1 week, he had lost a pound. And what was concerning was that normally the baby does lose some weight after they're born. However, after the first 2-3 days, normally they begin to regain their weight, and so they are expected to get back to their birth weight within a few weeks of being born. What I had happening was that Leighton's weight just kept on going down, and by the time we had gotten to the to that first appointment with the pediatrician, of course he'd seen a pediatrician in a hospital before, but that first visit outside of the hospital, he had lost 13% of his birth weight. And that raised a red flag for the pediatrician. They brought in another lactation consultant, and we discussed it. And they basically asked me to start supplementing his milk. Now, initially, they were saying supplement it with formula, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable doing that. I don't want to introduce formula. They're like, okay, so you're going to have to try to pump and give him an additional half ounce to 1 ounce more of milk after he's finished feeding. So they're like, oh, baby has just not gotten used to being on the outside yet. He is not used to having to actually nurse, and so he's getting tired very quickly and falling asleep even though he is not full. So what we're going to ask you to do is once he is finished eating, even if he's asleep, wake him up, try to get him to nurse again, and after that, still give him half ounce to 1 ounce more of milk. And they gave me a syringe, and then they gave me this other they gave me two syringes. One was a syringe that you could actually put the milk into his mouth, but the next one was a syringe that came with a tiny tube that could be taped to my breast, so that when he was nursing, extra milk would come through the tube. No, I had in my mind, I was like, look, listen, anything that I have to do to get this child to get the weight back, I'm going to do it. And actually, they pretty much told me that, okay, you have to come back tomorrow. So you're going to go home, you're going to do what we said, and tomorrow you're going to have to come back. And so I went home, and of course, I wasn't really making that much milk because my milk had just come in that Saturday morning. I wasn't making that much milk, but I decided, okay, so I would sit up and I would pump. So I would nurse him. I would actually use a syringe to actually supplement his milk with additional breast milk. And then once he was asleep, I would go and I would get out the electric breast pump, and I would pump. And I would just try to get at least a half ounce, so that I knew that I had enough for the next time he was up. And to be honest, those days I felt like all I did was nurse and pump. It took a really long time to get just a little bit of milk, because like I said, I didn't have like big supply, and but I struggled through it. I was determined. I had gotten this welcome kit from Enfamil, but in my mind, I was just like, I'm not doing it. I'm not using it. I know I can do this. I know we can do this. Because in my mind, breastfeeding was supposed to be easy. It was supposed to come naturally. And in that moment I was kicking myself because I wanted to take a breastfeeding class, but I had gotten to the US too late to do that. And so all I knew was from the lactation consultants, and also from whatever videos I watched, whatever I had taken a couple of childbirthing classes where they kind of glossed over breastfeeding. So that's all the knowledge that I had. But I utilized that, and I was, pumping to supplement and nursing him. And when I went back the next day, thankfully, he had actually started to put back on weight. They asked me to come back 2 days later. So when we went back, it was just to weigh him. So every time we would go to weigh him. And so we kept that up for about a week, where I would have to go home with him, keep on supplementing, go back, weigh, go back again, home, supplement, come back, weigh. And we kept that up, like I said, for a good week and a half, thereabouts, and until he started gaining weight, and they were happy with his weight gain, to the point where they said, I don't think you need to supplement anymore. I think he's got this when it comes to eating. Of course, as you can imagine, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so relieved that this has passed. And I was super happy that I was able to actually do that without having to give him formula. Like I said, nothing is wrong with formula, but it just wasn't something that I had envisioned myself doing with Leighton. I know that a lot of times once you start to supplement, it can affect your actual supply. And so I was kind of determined to get my supply to a place where one, I was making enough milk to feed him, and two, he was awake enough to eat. So things that I had to do, I would wake him up to eat, and when he woke up and he would nurse, he would fall asleep, I would have to find ways to wake him. And one thing that the lactation consultant told me that I did that was quite useful was that I would actually change his diaper, and that wet wipe, and I wouldn't use a wipe warmer, so that wipe would wake him up. He would be so flustered, he would be crying. And but once he was changed, I would switch sides, I would feed him again, and then once he was falling asleep again, I would actually use the syringe to give him another half ounce to 1 ounce of milk. Like I said, it picked up. His eating picked up, my supply picked up. As I said before at the beginning of this video, I do have an extra freezer in my garage that is full of breast milk, because even though Leighton used to take milk earlier, like when he was younger, by the time he got to 2-3 months, he did not want any he did not want to be butter fed, and he does not want to be butter fed now. I know that if you look at him now, you see the plump baby that is full of creases. You're like, I can't believe that this child was actually losing weight at one time. But yes, he was, and I was terrified out of my mind when the doctor started telling me, oh, we might have to if he continues to lose weight, and if he loses 14% of his birth weight, then we might have to start feeding him by IV. Of course, I plead the blood of Jesus against that, and I went home and sought him out. We are now at 6 months breastfeeding, as I said. Looking at 7 months coming up, still almost exclusively breastfeeding. Leighton is almost 22 pounds right now. He's in the 97th percentile for weight, and clearly I am proud of that, because I know where we're coming from. But he's also above average height as well, so we're not necessarily worried about his BMI, and he is not a lazy baby. He is, as I said, 6 going on 7 months old, trying to stand up, crawling all over the place. He plays with food. We hope that he will get more interested in actually eating food in the future. But for right now, I am a happily breastfeeding mama. The takeaway from this that I hope that you guys get is this: breastfeeding, even though we might think it is instinctive, some persons have an easy time of it, but that is not guaranteed. Women don't necessarily are not necessarily born knowing how to breastfeed. We have challenges. Our babies have bad latches. Our babies fall asleep. We have to find ways to keep them awake. We have to wake them up to feed them in order for them to get the nutrition that they need. And so I would strongly encourage new moms to take a breastfeeding class if one is available to you. There are breastfeeding classes online. That was the one mistake that I made that I regretted, primarily because, like I said, I came to the US very, very close to when I was going to have my son. There weren't any classes available within the hospital network that I was planning to deliver, and since I was going to take other prenatal classes, I thought, it would be covered, but to be honest, they kind of glossed over it. It wasn't covered in any detailed way. I didn't receive any advice at that point that was useful to me. Other things that I learned as a result of this: when it comes to lactation consultants, they're not all created equal. The lactation consultants at the hospital that I had my son, I didn't find them very useful at all. In fact, they only made my struggles to breastfeed worse. However, once I went to see the pediatrician, same network of providers, that lactation consultant that I met there had, she was much older. She was a grandmother, and I think she was more helpful. She was the person who gave me those nuggets of advice that were super helpful for keeping Leighton awake and figuring out, latching with him and getting both of us comfortable and relaxed enough to nurse. So that is the end of today's video. I'm going to do a follow-up video to talk about things that I did to actually have excellent supply. Like I said, I consider myself to be a pro now. I wouldn't say that I'm a super producer, but I produce quite a bit of milk. But I will cover in that video how I established and maintained my milk supply. All right, so that's it for today, folks. If you are not currently subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and click on that subscribe button. Also, make sure that you have your notifications turned on so that you can know when I post a new video. Make sure that you like and share this video with your friends and fellow mamas. And of course, walk good. I'll see you on the next one.